We're here for a simple reason this morning. We're here to bring your attention to what everyone, in our opinion, should consider a serious violation of trust by the Rauner administration in regards to the effort that has been underway for quite some time to reform the state school system of funding. It has come to our attention that information that we first saw yesterday in discussions with the governor's office and the Senate Republicans, that false and erroneous drafts of school funding numbers somehow made their way out of the Rauner administration office into the hands of a Bruce Rauner campaign group and are being used for political purposes. We think that everyone deserves an answer as to how and why that happened late yesterday. Today we are forwarding an official complaint and request for investigation to the Office of the Illinois Executive Inspector General. You will get a copy of that letter shortly after this press conference, right, John Patterson? All right. I think we are here today to tell you that we consider public education as the state's number one priority in conjunction with a balanced budget. We know the challenges that we've faced, and we know the challenges that we still face to accomplish that. I've worked for months on end with Secretary of Education Beth Purvis and others in the Rauner administration to try to improve our system of public school funding that we all acknowledge. And Governor Rauner has traveled the state acknowledging that the system is completely broken. Make no mistakes, we've had our disagreements. They've played out on the Senate floor as recently as Wednesday when we debated Senate Bill 1. And we still continue to this day to disagree on how to best achieve reform. But nonetheless, one thing that is important to move forward and get this done is to maintain some level of trust and honest negotiating. What I think we want to know, and what I want to know, is how state records from Bruce Rauner's education agency and his office ended up in the hands of a Rauner campaign group in what appears to be a direct effort to manipulate and derail efforts to reform school funding and mislead constituents and taxpayers and voters. We saw what happened in what is referred to as the Kankakee Times last night. Senator Hutchinson is here to speak about that. Furthermore, I think the better question is we want to know what Governor Rauner is doing about it. There were documents that are official state documents that were forwarded to what is essentially a campaign apparatus, erroneous documents that contain erroneous information in order to derail what was progress that was displayed by the Senate Democrats this week to advance school funding reform in Illinois. Now, today I've been told time and again by many members of the Senate and individuals in the governor's office that they acknowledge that those numbers that ended up in the Kankakee Times and have been distributed to others around the state are completely false. What I've yet to see is any public effort from the governor to explain how and why the fraudulent analysis that was created by someone in his office was given to a campaign group and what he is going to do to set the record straight. Thank you. Our next speaker is Senator Hutchinson.
Hello, everybody. I don't have very much to add except for the fact that I represent a district that is struggling. And one of the reasons I supported Senate Bill 1 is, in large part, was because of the hold harmless provision. So when I woke up this morning to hearing that, I supported and urging people to call me because I supported a bill that was going to take money from school districts, when I know I represent school districts who, A, have been struggling under lack of adequate funding for decades and decades, and then districts who manage to keep up with the pace and try to deal with the cuts and the slow pays and all the problems that come with this historic impasse, it'd be very difficult for them to weather any further eroding of their financial basis. So part of the reason why I believe strongly in the school funding reform issue is that I don't look at just my kids in Kankakee. I look at all the kids of the state of Illinois as they're ours. And what we're going through right now is incredibly difficult. It's incredibly difficult. I'll meet anybody on the merits. but don't lie. At this point, the information that was published essentially they're not even based on the amendment that we voted on. So in a time where there's all this noise and all this angst and all this cynicism and hyper-partisan everything, at a time when there's this, then, if you're going to put information out, you're going to put numbers out, make sure it's the correct information and the correct numbers. That's the least you can do. I affectionately refer to as my babies, my children in the Kankakee County school districts deserve nothing but what the best that we can give them. And because I'm in the middle of all of this, I, like most of my constituents, are tired of this. We deserve better.
Thank you. State Senator Iris Martinez. If you look at Senate Bill 1, it aims to make sure that all children in Illinois get an equal education. But apparently Governor Rauner and his administration think that some children don't deserve the same chance. Apparently the children in Chicago public schools did something wrong by being low income, by being black or brown, and that they don't deserve equal opportunities across the state. It is our responsibility as legislators to make sure that the circumstances children are born into do not dictate the education that they receive. It is our job to stand up for every child in our state. The state's top education official has said that the education reform bill falsely bails out Chicago. Let me remind Governor Rauner and Beth Purvis that Chicago Public School is the third largest school district in the nation. So if there are challenges, it's right there in CPS. It is not bad enough that we have education secretary who will not stand up for our children, but actually pits Chicago public school students against all the other children across the state, and that is wrong. Shame on her. In order to restore trust and maintain transparency during this important process, I too stand with my colleagues in urging that the Inspector General conduct an investigation into this matter. I'm tired of hearing the term bailing out CPS. CPS, again, is the third largest school district with so many challenges. And shame on the administration that cannot actually look at this picture for all children across the state and that every child across the state deserves the same education. But we have to focus on where our poor children and the ones that are not getting adequate education, and these Senator Menard's bill will do exactly that. It will take care of every child, every school district across the whole entire state and treat every child alike to get a quality education. So, I say to our Secretary of Education, shame on you on continuing to pit CPS against all the other children across the state. Do your job. Let's get a balanced budget and let's get this education reform bill passed. It is the right thing for the children of the whole entire state.
Good morning, everyone. Senator Mike Hastings. I represent the south suburbs of Chicago. I'd first like to thank Governor Rauner for bringing Washington politics down to Springfield. This is absurd of what's happening here. Now, on the floor in debate, I asked Senator Menard, I said, Senator Menard, has the governor's administration or ISB provided you any information? Governor Menard, or I should say, a little preemptive strike there.
All right, Governor.
There you go. Governor Menard, sorry. Freudian slip. But Senator Rauner, he defended the administration, he defended ISB in terms of saying, for the most part, they've acted in good faith. I asked, have they suppressed information from you? Because they haven't provided it. And then we got into a long floor debate where Senator Ryder, who decides to say, oh, you have a Perry Mason gotcha moment where, the governor is suppressing information. Well, he was. This is clear evidence of him having the numbers and not providing it to the bill sponsor. Not only did he not provide it to the bill sponsor of an important issue, not only it's the most important issue to provide education for our kids, but the information gets leaked out to one of his political organizations. If that's not wrong in itself, I don't know what is. If you're not concerned about this, gosh, what's more important than our kids' information? He provides this extremely information to a political organization. That's wrong. He's compromised his integrity. He's compromised his administration. This is another example of his gross mismanagement of another state agency in the state of Illinois. And that's embarrassing. Why don't you start leading, Governor, and stop screwing around and stop campaigning across the state? You spent 2 years doing nothing, and now you spend 2 years on TV commercials. Start leading our state. That's what you get paid to do. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for being here. I'm Jennifer Bertino-Tarrant. I am the chairwoman of the Senate Committee and from Will County. I'm here most importantly for my colleague, Senator Manar, who took a bill 2-3 years ago, and it has become basically a journey. He has been a yeoman in this process. He has gone across the state, listened to people, listened to concerned. I live in the suburbs, and we were with high property taxes, taking dollars away from our schools was going to be worrisome. And I can't tell you numerous times that Senator Menard came and listened. What happened today was gross misconduct. We had a process, we had a hearing 2 weeks ago where things were vetted out. To do this was pure politics. And as someone who likes to sit back and listen and observe, things like this can't be kept silent because it's a violation of what is right and what we should be doing and what we should not be doing. And what we've done today is a violation of the process. Senator Menard has been graceful in this process. He has been kind. He has been more gracious than I ever would be. And when your integrity is in jeopardy because of this information, that to me doesn't sit well. So once again, as I said on the floor, thank you for caring about the kids, not the politics. And the governor and the Republicans have turned children into a political game, and that's wrong. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Assistant Majority Leader Don Trotter. And let me tell you about what doesn't work. What doesn't work is, one, misinformation, a lot of hyperbole, a lot of things that do not bring individuals together. As we've been working on this budget for the past 2.5 years, one of the main things that's kept us apart was just this humongous distrust for each other. And then that comes from, one, trying to create the argument to be the holder of the truth. Well, the truth is we have done nothing, and we see all of our schools throughout this state feeling the brunt of that. We're not seeing it just to K-12, we're seeing it in higher education. We see it not only in how we pay our bills to our providers. So this is, and what has happened as of recent, or so I was of the thought, is that things were coming together. We are now less than 13 days or 12 days before the end of our session. This is not how we pass a budget. This is not with the information that went out the other day. That is not how we move our state forward. If we cannot get together now, unless at least on the truth, then nothing will get done for years to come. We can point fingers at each and every one of us. We all came down here with the trust of those individuals in our community, the residents of the great state of Illinois. And we came down here promising them that we would do whatever we could to enrich and enhance their quality of life. We don't do that by spreading misinformation and half-truths. We still have a lot of work to do. But one of the first things we need to do is, one, clean up our act.
Is that it? All right, we got time for a few questions.
Senator, where was this was it, published anywhere other than Kankakee County?
It was distributed to some of the members of the Senate. And I believe I got reports this morning, and let me qualify this. This was late last night, early this morning, that some superintendents around the state were getting this in their inbox specific to their district or their area school districts, very similar to what was published in Kankakee.
Were these numbers discussed with you in your meetings with that program?
It appears that they were. So yesterday, Senator Hutchinson, Senator Lightfoot, Senator Staines, and I went to discuss this issue once again, despite the fact that the Senate passed a bill with a near veto-proof majority. Would have been veto-proof had we not had one absence because of illness, and Senator Hayne. This representation of what Senate Bill 1 from their standpoint was shown to us, and we quickly qualified that and pointed out that that's not the bill that the Senate voted on. So, there was a good discussion, as there always is about school funding, as to how that came to us. So we left that meeting with the understanding that, that is not what we had taken a vote on. And very different, very different. And everyone knows that, one slight change in a chart on school funding can, send people, into orbit. So that's where we left it. And I would note, too, that after being accused of walking away from a table in a statement the day previous by Dr. Purvis, I was again at the table with two of my colleagues. So we thought that was the end of it. And then here comes the information somewhere from someone, either in the Senate Republican caucus or in the governor's office, with information that was claimed to have been produced by the State Board of Education. So somehow along the way, that information that was acknowledged was completely not factual was given to what is a campaign apparatus. And that is a problem. And the question today is, what is Bruce Rauner doing about that?
What are you doing? Are you asking an inspector?
We're sending a letter to the Executive Inspector General's office today.
Is this criminal?
I think that's up to them to determine. At the very least, it's just another piece of evidence of why it's almost impossible to have an honest and trustworthy conversation with the Rauner administration about anything, let alone about something as complicated as school funding reform.
I know that analysis was not based on what you voted on, but there's a disclaimer on the story that says it was, the information in the story was based on an analysis that was done last summer, implicating or implying it was based on a previous version of your education funding reform. Did you see that information?
I don't have the slightest idea, Doug. Here's what I know. This information that's here and that's being distributed, that's having an impact on Senator Hutchinson's district. By the way, whose school districts will gain under the bill that she supported? Somehow this got from someone in the governor's office to this website, which is quite cozy with Governor Rauner. And that is a violation. That's a violation of the law. And someone needs to ask the question, and we're going to ask it. If Governor Rauner's not going to take action on his own, we're going to ask the question because it deserves to be answered. We've been through this with printouts before. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of the executive branch using and manipulating data to pit people against something that he claims he wants. He shows up in school districts downstate, he points a finger at Chicago. He goes to Chicago and he points a finger somewhere else. And all the while, he uses data, the levers of government, the levers of his agencies, the staff that are paid through the taxes of the people of this state to politic. And that's exactly what this is. Using the levers of government in a political way to kill a bill that he claims he wants.
Senator, after Senate Bill 1. Highlight the problem of voting on legislation where you don't have the numbers to combat this fake information. If you say it's fake, can't you say, hey, well, we run the numbers and this is what it actually is?
Well, I'd point you to the page of the bill that would, by the way, we're the only caucus in this conversation proposing a plan that doesn't cut schools. We got lectures for years about school districts losing money in a school funding reform previous bills that we've debated and passed. Senator Berrickman's bill cuts, I think, 160 school districts in the state. Maybe that's what he should tell the superintendents and tell legislators. Our bill doesn't do that because we've learned from past experiences that in order to change the system, you have to compromise, you have to change your legislation. That's what our bill does. We did, as Senator Hastings noted, we had this debate on the Senate floor. He asked me, why are they holding out numbers? My response was, I don't think they are. We've requested them. It takes time. I don't think there's anything going on here other than what the normal process is. All the while, there was this other effort that was, if you read Secretary Purvis's statement right after the Senate voted on Senate Bill 1, it's a precursor to this. It's a clear precursor to this. So while I'm trying to say that I think everyone's acting in good faith, the Rauner administration is huddled on the second floor, getting ready to pump out what is clearly lies about an important bill in order to kill it.
You haven't seen the numbers on SB 1, right?
Correct.
What if they come out and show that Kankakee is cut or something?
They won't, John, because we start from FY17. It's pretty simple. We start from FY17. Everyone starts from FY17, and then we go up. There's no going down. That's a result of what has been much consternation over the last several years.
Wasn't that the intent of the amendment that they're basing these numbers on?
I don't even know who they are in that question. I don't know who they are and what the numbers are. I'm not going to give them one ounce of credibility.
Well, how do you think that this happened, though? I mean, earlier you made a very clear
Anybody else
statement
wanna
that you thought that this was the governor's office disseminating this information.
Yeah. Good.
Monique, where do you think the information comes from? That's my question. I asked Andy on the floor, hey, have you gotten any numbers on this bill? And he acts in good faith and says no, all while the governor's office is downstairs ready to leak out the information. That's wrong.
Yeah.
Doesn't even reflect what we voted on
But you mentioned that perhaps some of your senator colleagues have this information.
after the fact.
After. That's since last night.
Does this poison the well? Is it impossible to move
I
forward?
mean, my concern is this isn't the only issue that takes place in the state of Illinois where there's some ethical concerns about getting information out or maybe buying a warehouse in Springfield. I mean, this is a systemic problem of gross mismanagement of our state government. And now he's injected leaking information. That's why I said, thanks, Mr. Rauner, for bringing Washington to Springfield. We really appreciate it.
The lines
Can you address the question that Monique asked earlier in a way is, you have workers' comp that's not together yet, you have the property tax freeze that's not together yet, those bills haven't been called, they're still negotiating. Obviously, from Senate 4 action, Senate Bill 1 was not fully, there wasn't a consensus. Why was it so important to move forward
Yeah.
with it if there wasn't that consensus?
Because that's a fair question. It was asked on the floor. Here's my answer then, here's my answer now. At the time, we had 14 days left. We have had daily conversations beyond just Senate Bill 1 on all those issues, going back to January the 9th. And at some point in time, the sponsor of the legislation, whether it's myself or Senator Trotter or Senator Hutchinson, on other issues, we have to make a decision as to what we're going to do. Are we going to sit around and hope that the Republicans that we work with in the Senate are going to compromise? Or are we going to call a bill for a vote to advance it in the first step? And so I made the determination after having consulted the caucus, and we decided we were going to move forward with this. And I would just say this, and this is why. What has been told to us as recently as yesterday, is on school funding, when we agree to the governor's turnaround agenda, then we will be rewarded with passing Senator Barrickman's bill. That's not a negotiation. Let me say it again. When we pass the governor's turnaround agenda, we will be rewarded by passing Senator Barrickman's bill. That's not a negotiation. So we decided to call Senate Bill 1, and it has wide support. This is a diverse group of people that come from very different parts of the state, that represent very different types of school districts. All of the needs are addressed in Senate Bill 1. There's only one person against it today that I can find, and it's Bruce Rauner.
Senator, we were here Wednesday night, and when asked why you still had to wait just a little bit longer, Senator Rose said the ISB numbers are about to come out. Senator Menard rushed SB 1 through without knowing the numbers. The numbers are just about to come out. So what are the numbers?
Dave, you have to ask ISB. We don't control the State Board of Education. They have very clear guidelines on how they put together and release numbers. and that takes time. We took a vote on Senate Bill 1 because of the broad support for the bill throughout the state. Broad from administration, from educators, from reform organizations, from you name it. We took a vote because it represents what is a reflection of the discussion from the last 3 years. And when we discussed this in our caucus, it was pretty clear that everybody wanted to move forward. And I think this begs the larger question: if the Republicans aren't going to compromise, then Democrats have to be prepared to lead and to take votes. And that's what we did on school funding.
But about these pamphlets, I mean, if you took out Walter Cronkite and put his ghost on at halftime in the Super Bowl, you'd reach everybody in the world, and it'd be real credible. If you wrote something on the bathroom wall, that would be not credible and reach nobody. And it seems to me that these pamphlets you're talking about are closer to not reaching people and not being credible.
You mean this?
And the voices in my head say thou doth protest too much.
Okay, I guarantee if we weren't here, it would be the Metro East Sun next, or the Sangamon County whatever it is next.
And people who hold elective office know this across the state now. What used to be little whispers in dark rooms amongst people now has the ability to be amplified in ways that are very difficult to deal with in this 24-hour, 20-second news bite kind of world. These organizations are picked up and printed and reprinted again as fact. And it happens in the blink of an eye. It happens before you go to sleep. It happens, I mean, I've seen multiple times where there's something happening on the floor, and I mean, even with some of you in here, and before I get back to my office, it's up on the web. Now, in sense of all the grand bargain conversations, everybody knows I have the piece that nobody ever wants to talk about, but I also have the piece that makes the whole thing work, because if we don't have any money, we can't do any of this. And it's getting to the point now where I cannot read some of the vile and disgusting comments that come my way from people all over the state about tax situations. This doesn't do anything to help it, and if it gets reprinted because people believe that this is a genuine journalistic newspaper, it gets then reported as fact. There's a hold harmless provision in this Amendment 5, which is what we voted on. It starts at fiscal year 17 and goes up. And part of the reason why we were all willing to support it is because we know how desperate our school districts are for the funding that they're owed through this impasse and the funding that they need to have to reach adequacy levels. This isn't a new conversation. So that goes back to number one, there's nothing premature about this. There's nothing rushed about this. We're now 2 years in. And for school funding formula conversations, that's a 30-year argument. There's nothing rushed about this at all.
There's long been a porous kind of line between government operations and campaigns. Why is this instance so egregious in your mind?
This is a state document that I saw in an office that ended up here. No one's claiming responsibility. There's a whole lot of finger pointing going on right now. So to me, there's a violation of the law there. And we're asking what's the governor doing about it? And if the governor's truly interested in reforming a system that he claims he's interested in reforming, then he would get to the bottom of this, some heads would roll, and then we would have an adult conversation about facts. And then we would negotiate, and that's how you get to a bipartisan agreement. A bipartisan agreement, good faith negotiations, doesn't begin with this. And we get beat up because we don't sit at a table in good faith when we got to go home and we got to deal with stuff like this because someone in the government sent it to someone on the campaign side.
Can you address why it's illegal? I mean, I look at government documents all the time, in as much as, you request something, you get it back, be it a report about ISB or whatever it is. Aside from this alleged document, I haven't seen the source, but aside from this alleged document being about an amendment that you guys didn't vote on, is there classified information?
Hold on, Greg. Yeah, I don't know that it's about an amendment that we didn't vote on. I don't know that. I don't know how you know that.
That's how I've heard it characterized.
Okay.
Even today, it was, the numbers that this publication reported were about an amendment to SB 1 that you guys didn't even pass.
That's a pretty good answer. I don't believe it.
But to the question, is there like classified information? Are there social security numbers on here? Why is this, even if it's wrong information,
Yeah.
why is it an illegal breach?
Well, we believe it is. That's why we're sending a letter to the Executive Inspector General's office for them to determine.
What about it is illegal?
Because it was using government-produced work by someone that is erroneous, by the way, verified by, according to this, the State Board of Education, which means someone in the government produced this work and attached it to a bill that was voted on by the Senate and sent it over to the non-government campaign side.
Senator Menard, do you think this story was?
Unless they could produce a FOIA request, perhaps, for a document that I doubt anyone here knew existed.
Do you think this story was allegedly planted to sway public opinion or to sway House members to vote the other way on it once it gets over?
That's a good question. I'll give you my theory. There might be some differing theories. My theory is that this was done to erase the terrible vote that the Senate Republicans took on Senate Bill 1. That's my theory. Very similar to several years ago where the governor asked the Senate Republican caucus to walk the plank on a school funding appropriation bill. They followed him gleefully, and then he signed the bill. This is a good bill. This bill is widely supported. For the life of me, I don't know why Governor Rauner isn't demanding that we pass the bill sooner so he could sign it into law and actually put a win on the board in his administration. But nonetheless, he's now trying everything desperately to kill it, and I think that's what this was.
Senator, you
Anybody else
referred
wants to do that one?
the 2 years as campaign operative, and I'm wondering, since when do we expect honesty in campaigning?
That's a good question, probably better left for another news conference, Dave.
Well, and again,
Yeah.
back to the question of why vote on SB 1 if there wasn't a consensus.
Why not? I think the better question is why not?
But beyond that, when are we going to see Democrats
Because-
pick up the revenue bill
yeah,
and
that's-
pass that with the majority?
With all due respect, it's the sponsor's call when to bring a bill up for a vote. I stand by my decision as backed up by our caucus. The Senate Republicans have had months, 5 months, to put a bill out that represents what they stand for. By the way, I would remind you, Amendments 1 and 2 represent that, and I got blasted for those amendments. So we went to our version, and we called the bill, and it passed with wide support in our caucus.